Hi, I'm Merwin and this is the Musician's Workbench. Today it's upgrades day. I'm upgrading my Fender Squier Affinity. I'm going to be putting a bone nut on it and some vintage style tuners. You might wonder why anyone would bother doing that. It's a good guitar. But the thing with the slightly cheaper versions of the Fender guitar, Fender Squier Bullet and Fender Squier Affinity, the body and the neck, they're usually really great, but there's a few parts where they sort of shortchange you a bit and they use cheaper parts. Three places in particular. One is the nut. They give you a plastic nut, and it's better to have a bone nut because that provides less friction when the strings move in a minuscule amount. When you do bends, the strings sort of stretch this way and they stretch that way, and when they're rubbing over the nut, sometimes they have a tendency to grab a little bit, and if that happens a lot, then you end up with a guitar that's going out of tune and not holding its tune like the really expensive guitars. So a quick way to fix that is put a bone nut on there. Costs a bit extra, and if they had to do that to all of the Affinity guitars they made, well, then that would bump up the price and they wouldn't make as much money. Beginner guitar players don't really care that much. They're happy to retune a little bit here, but when you're playing gig after gig after gig, it's annoying that you have to retune your guitar all the time. The second part is the tuners. More expensive guitars have either locking tuners or the vintage style tuners. Your regular tuner just has a hole in the side that then you turn around, but you need quite a few winds to have the string grab and hold properly. With vintage style tuners, they've got a hole in the middle. You poke the string in, bend it at 90 degrees, and you only have to do 1 or 2 spins around the peg before the string is locked and in place. And again, that means there is less string that's wrapped around a peg that can move slightly and again lose its tuning. So the nut and the tuning pegs, they're being upgraded so that the overall tuning of the guitar is more stable, obviously after you've worn the strings in and bent them around so they're not the point of failure. After that, we're going to upgrade the pickups. This is a little more contentious because some people like the sound of the pickups that are in there. There's expensive pickups, there's cheap pickups, but at the end of the day, pickups are like beauty. They're in the eye of the beholder. Some people really like cheaper sounding pickups because they offer different tonal qualities. I'm going for a more vintage sound though, so I'm going to be putting what's called Alnico pickups in here. I might do a video some other time on the whole difference between which pickups sound what way and why they sound that way, but for now I'm putting in some more vintage style pickups into this guitar, and then we will see how that goes. So I'll go through this now. I'll show you some pictures of the process that I go through, tell you what I thought about the upgrade. So the funny thing was, when I pulled the strings off, the nut just came out straight away. I don't even think it was glued in, which was kind of funny, but it worked out well for this exercise because I didn't really have to do anything to get the nut out. Often people have to tap it or sometimes even get in there with a sharp blade, but it just came off in my hands. So that was fun. That was good. Okay, so the first thing that happens when you take out the tuning pegs from the headstock is you've got that hole to deal with. Now, the tuning pegs that I was putting in, they needed a slightly smaller hole, and now after doing it, I would have probably done it a different way, but what I did was I got a dowel rod from my local hardware store and sandpapered it down because it wasn't quite the right size, till I could shove it in that hole and it was snug, and then I chopped it up into little sort of different fingers of dowel rod, and that were all the same size. Shoved it in, glued it, and then I bored a hole through the middle. Now, as you can see, there's not much left that was actually needed, so if I was to do it again, I'd probably paint in some glue on the inside of the hole, let it dry, paint another coat or 2 maybe, and that would actually probably be enough. That the new shim going in and the new peg, that's all that it would need. But yes, I went the other way and I put the dowel rod in, then bored it out the middle, and you can see it there. It's it worked good. It did what I needed, but it was probably more effort than what was required to get the job done. Once you've got the tuning pegs out and you've got the hole to the right size that the new tuning pegs need, and you can put them in, then you want them to be all straight. So you can use a ruler. In my case, I use the edge of a fret leveler. Once they're all straight, you can put in the dots where the screws are going to go. And I drilled maybe about 1 millimeter in all those spots just to give the screw a leading hole in, but then after that I let the screw do all the work. That's all it needs to secure it. The other side, if the shim that goes in, if the hole is the right size, you can push the shim in with enough force and that's all you need, it'll stay there. Okay, so we've put in the bone nut and we've put in the vintage style tuners. The next step now is to put in some Alnico 5 pickups. People say it improves the sound. Improves, better, worse. It's a relative term. Some people really like the sound of ceramic pickups. I'm looking for a more vintage style sound though, and I'm just interested to see, what happens when we put these in. So I'm going to play the guitar now with the pickups that are in it, just through my Podex 3 Live, through an amp mod which is simulating a Marshall amp. And one thing that I think people miss a lot when they do these comparisons between pickups is they do the tone comparison, but they don't usually do any comparison that shows you the difference in how hot the pickup is. And by hot, I mean how much signal is coming out of it. So currently, I've set this going through the Marshall amp mod to just be going to the point of breakup. That means where the signal's perfectly clean and then it just starts to get a bit grainy, a little bit dirty, a bit of that distortion coming in. And when we do the sound test on the current setup, then we'll be able to see whether it got hotter or whether the new pickups coming in aren't as loud and therefore maybe it doesn't actually reach breakup when we put in the new pickups. If they are hotter, the breakup should be a bit more pronounced. And in practical terms, what that means is the hotter you have pickups in a guitar, the more dirty the sound you can get out of an amp just on its overdrive channel. If a strong signal is already coming in and you've got the gain turned all the way up and it's only breaking up a bit, then your pickups are probably a little bit weak. Now, if your pickups are hot and you've got the gain turned all the way up, then you're going to get some really good sort of break-up, crunch, very sort of natural distortion coming out of the amplifier. So that's something we're going to be looking for today. Do these current pickups provide more break-up or less break-up than what they're currently doing? The pickups are all on 10, the volume is on 10, the amp gain is set somewhere around like 3 or 4 out of possible 10, and then we will put in the new pickups and then we'll see if we're getting more distortion or less distortion on this current setting. Okay, so here we go. So just some chords. You can hear that when it's just played like some gentle notes, it's clean. Now when you really lean into them, it's starting to just change a little bit. And when you play a chord, well, some people would be happy with that as a chord in a rock song, like. But when you play single notes, that's what we mean by breakup. It's just pushing it. It's the notes starting to move out of the clean section and go into the a distorted sort of feel or vibe. So with a pick, we've got. And that's on the bridge pickup. Let's put it to the neck pickup. The middle. Alright, now we're just going to add a bit of reverb to all that just to make it sound just a bit nicer. So now we're going to rip these pickups out and we are going to put some Alnico 5 pickups in and see what the difference is. Okay, so all done. Probably took about 40 minutes all up, just taking everything apart, looking at it, making sure I had everything right, putting in the pickups, making sure that they worked properly, and now it's test time. So here we go. Now, like I did before, I'm just doing the single coil isolated. I'm not doing the in-between sounds where you've got one cancelling, but that does work. It does have the noise cancelling like a regular Strat does when you have it between two pickups. But here we are on the bridge. The pickups are pretty much identically as far from the strings as what the last ones were, except I did do a little adjustment on the pole pieces where you get a clamp and you push down on the pole pieces so you loosen them a bit, and then you can move them into position so they are not perfectly flat. They have a slight arc to them, which then follows the distance of the strings as they curve around the fretboard. It's not necessary, but I like the look and thought I'd give it a go. I'll see if I can find a link to where I saw how to do it on YouTube. It's pretty cool, and if you do it properly, you don't damage anything. But alright, so here we go. The neck pickup. Middle pickup. And then the bridge pickup. Okay, so let's do a few chords. Do a few chords on the neck. In the middle. And on the bridge. Let's go without the pick, do a bit of finger work. On the bridge. Sorry, on the neck. Let's put a bit of reverb on that, just to sweeten it up a little bit. We'll go back to the pick. We're on the bridge pickup. Go to the neck. And the middle. Okay, so overall, I think these Alnico 5 pickups are a little bit hotter. They are a little bit slightly more, it gives you slightly more of an aggressive attack, which I like. But is the difference huge? Like, is this something you really need to do to your guitar? Probably not. I do like that I've done it. I'm glad I did it. It was definitely fun to find out, what bigger difference it would make. I am actually pretty happy though about the bone and the vintage style tuners. They do make life a lot easier when you're taking the strings off. Taking the strings off this to take the pick guard off and do all that work was a breeze, because you only had to do 2 or 3 winds and then the string came off. And because they're all bent in that shape, when you want to put them back on, you just push it in, do a couple of turns, and it's fine. The pickups, yeah, I like them. Do they sound better? It's such a subjective choice. I think a lot of people who like modern sounds these days actually prefer ceramics. Alnico 5 pickups and Alnico 2 and 3 pickups do have a more vintage style sound to them. But yeah, these, if you just objectively looking at what the major difference is that I can hear in my ear, they're slightly hotter, which means, as you can tell, it's kind of like having a ceramic. It's kind of like the ceramic if you put on about an 8. So that's like, in terms of hotness, that's a ceramic. Then so it's pretty similar, but it's a bit more of an aggressive attack, and it allows you to get a bit more crunch out of an overdriven amp. Okay, so that's today's upgrade. If you liked what you saw today, please like and subscribe and turn on all notifications. I'm Merwin. This is the Musician's Workbench. Have a great day.